Hey there, welcome back friends. Today we will talk about user defined exceptions, and before that we will proceed further and create a better example from the existing program. This particular program is taken from our last program, so let's get started. In here, inside the sum method, let's get rid of these two statements, and we would be creating a int entity. The name of the entity would be like x, and we will initialize this value as 1 maybe, and then we would be adding a switch case. So let's do that. Switch would be on variable x, right? And inside the switch we would be adding couple of cases. So first would be like case 1, and inside the case 1 we will throw a exception, and it would be, for example, file not found exception. So let's do that. Throw file not found exception. Let me take help of Eclipse autocomplete, which is taking some time. Here we go. So throw file not found exception. Oops, in here I have made a mistake. We need to add the new keyword because we need to throw the object of the class. So throw new file not found exception, which is perfect. Then we will add the break statement. Let's add the case 2. Case 2 would be based on exception. So let's do that. Throw new exception. Here we go. And then break. Alright, so this seems to be good enough. Now in here we are getting some kind of error in here, and it is unreachable code error, I suppose. Let me hover upon this. So it's a unreachable code error, and the reason is pretty simple. As soon as we throw a exception, the control from the method would be returned back. So as a result, the break statement will never get executed because the control would be returned. So let's get rid of these break statement. Alright, and now when we make use of this throws keyword, definitely we can throw multiple type of exception. That is also possible. So in here we are throwing exception, and we can also throw a file not found exception. So even that is possible. And in order to throw multiple exceptions, in here in the declaration part we can definitely make use of a comma, and here we can declare for multiple throwable exceptions. So this particular method can throw two type of exception. First one is exception, second one is file not found exception. Now in here, when we will be calling this sum method inside the main method, then definitely this method will throw either file not found exception or exception. So based on that, our statement would be printed. So that's it. So firstly we will be making the value of x as 1, and then proceeding further we would be like making the value of x as 2. But somehow here is some kind of error. Let me show you the error. Alright, so there is some kind of syntax error. Let me fix this. Here we go. So now everything is okay. Let me execute this, and now catch block of main method should be the output. Here we go, which is perfect. Let me add in a message in here, and inside these pair of parentheses we will display the name of the exception type, which will make it more sensible. Alright, if I make this exception as for case 2, then we will be throwing the exception class exception. So definitely the catch block from exception E would be executed. So catch block of main method, and the type is exception, which is perfect. Now friends, in here everything is cool. Now in here we would be adding a yet another case, and this would be a default case. So this would be like default case, and in here we will throw a new exception, and this would be a user defined exception. So we will type in new, throw new user defined exception. Now what is a user defined exception? Till now we haven't created this. A user defined exception is a exception which is created by us, which is definitely the case. Now throwable is definitely a super class for exception class as well. So this is the reason why it is showing a subclass of throwable. Let me show you real quick. So in here, if I type in exception class Java 8, then definitely we can able to see the hierarchy. Let me show you real quick. Alright, so in here exception class is child for throwable class, and throwable class give us the functionality to throw an exception. As a result, definitely we can either extend from throwable class or exception class. What is a better practice? Definitely if we extend it directly from throwable class is a better practice, but even if we extend from exception class, even that will work. Let me show you. In here there is a warning, and the warning is based on serial version ID. Now we will talk about the serial version ID later down the line, as if now don't worry about it. In here, if we check inside our sum method, the error is vanished and the default case is throwing user defined exception. Let me show you what happens if we throw a user defined exception. First of all, in here we will be catching a new exception type. So let's add that, catch user defined exception, right? And inside this we will print the stack trace. So in here there is some kind of error. Remove the catch clause. Somehow there is some kind of error. Okay. So as we are making use of the exception class, the user defined exception is already handled. So this is the reason why it is giving us an error. No worry. First of all, let us print the stack trace. Here we go. And let me rearrange things a little. Let me format things a little. And here is some kind of issue. Oops. Some kind of issue because one brace is extra. Now the error is vanished. Alright, so this looks good to me, and now let us update the value of x to maybe 3. Now definitely this particular case will get executed, but take note of it that in here there is no constructor and we haven't added any notification of what exactly will happen if this exception occurs. If we execute this program, it will say a user defined exception occurred. It has also given us the line number, but definitely there is no specific type of exception or some message. For example, in here, if we print the stack trace for file not found exception, then what would be the message from the exception class? Let me show you. In here, if I type in e.print stack trace, then there is some kind of user message which is provided by Java. So let me show you that. Now in here, if we check, there is a exception, and in this message there is no specific documentation or description related to message, and the reason is we haven't provided a message for the same. Now how to provide a message is something which we will see, but before that we are extending the exception class, and if we check the documentation, in the documentation we can easily see exception class is a child class for throwable class. So definitely if we, for example, get rid of this extend exception words in here, the warning, the error which Java gives is that no exception of type user defined exception can be thrown, and exception type must be subclass of throwable, and throwable is definitely the class. Now there is a small little change in here. Let me show you. Now in here, if we type in extends throwable, then definitely this particular line of code will start complaining, and the reason is pretty simple. If we are extending using the throwable class, then definitely we want to and we have to throw the user defined exception as well, or we need to handle it using try and catch block. So let's do one of the either way. The easier way is to throw the user defined exception, and let's do that. For doing so, we will make use of a comma, and in here we will type in user defined exception, and our error would be vanished. So there is a small little change. If we extend using exception, then handling the exception is optional. The exception becomes a unchecked exception type, whereas if we make use of throwable class, then definitely we have to handle the exception, and the exception becomes of checked exception type. What is checked exception, what is unchecked exception is something which we will discuss in our next video. Alright, so let's proceed further, and in here let me execute the program, and definitely our program will work properly. Now friends, usually the use of user defined exception is pretty rare, for the simple reason that the list of exceptions which are available to us already is huge, and there are so many exceptions which are available to us. The use of user defined exception is kind of rare. So as a result, the topic of user defined exception is not that important. Now this is all about it for today's video. In our next video we will discuss about checked exception and unchecked exception. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.